And now I am so excited to tell you about today's presenter, Anja Godlewski-Dykes. Anja Godlewski-Dykes is a senior account growth specialist at Digital Hyve, a digital marketing agency with offices in Syracuse and Rochester. In this role, Godlewski-Dykes works directly with Digital Hyve's account service teams to identify growth opportunities for current clients and provides trainings to continue growing the skill set of the account services team members. She also manages a portfolio of clients running national and regional digital marketing campaigns. Prior to working for Digital Hyve, Godlewski-Dykes worked as the membership and marketing specialist at MedTech Association, a New York State trade association for biomedical and pharmaceutical industries. Godlewski-Dykes graduated in 2015 from SUNY Oswego with a bachelor's degree in public relations and a minor in business administration. While a student at SUNY Oswego, she was heavily involved in PRSSA, the administration. PRSSA, the honors program, and held numerous internships, including interning for the Oswego Alumni Association and Pickney Hugo Group, a full-service marketing agency in Syracuse. In her free time, Godlewski-Dykes enjoys traveling and spending time with her family, including her dog, Lucy. And with that, please join me in welcoming Anja Godlewski-Dykes.
Thank you so much, Amaya, for that overview. And thank you, Laura, and everyone at SUNY Oswego for having me to host today's session. Love everything that's going on for Imagine 2021 and so excited that I could be a part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me one moment for that, and then we'll dive right into the presentation for today. So before I jump into everything, again, Amaya, thank you so much for that introduction. I always love to first kind of give an overview of everything that we're going to be talking about so that you get a little roadmap of the next hour that we'll spend together. So I'm going to start off talking about my background, specifically what I did when I was a student at SUNY Oswego, and really how that helped propel me forward into my first job out of college, and then the job that I hold today at Digital Hyve. I'm going to do a high-level overview on the difference between marketing and digital marketing, just because I think it'll help shape the conversation that we have when we talk about Digital Hyve and my role there. And then we'll do what I call the Digital Hyve download. So all of the information that you guys need to know as it pertains to Digital Hyve. I know, our organization has a handful of Oswego alumni that currently work there. Both of our co-founders are Oswego alumni themselves. So definitely a great place for any of you considering a first job out of college. Then we'll talk a little bit more just about, some tips and tricks when it comes to getting your first job out of college. Things that have helped me not only in that first job, but in additional jobs that I got. And then we will end with question and answers throughout the whole entire presentation. If you have a question at any time, feel free to throw it in the chat. Amaya is going to be super helpful and read out any questions that do come through. So that my attention is called to those. And then at the end, we will have a formal Q&A too for anything that wasn't addressed throughout the presentation. So diving right in to a little bit more about me. As Amaya mentioned earlier, I graduated from Oswego in 2015 with my bachelor's in public relations. And I had a minor with business administration on the pre-MBA track. Little plug for anyone that is interested in the business admin minor. The pre-MBA track is definitely a good idea to look at. It is So there's a little bit more to the pre-MBA minor compared to the other options that Oswego has, but it works really well for anyone that is interested in getting an MBA after graduation, and it covers all of your prerequisites. I myself right now am in the process of applying to MBA schools, and it's been really helpful having some of those prereqs out of the way with that minor. So little plug there, which I'll plug throughout this whole presentation. I'll have a few plugs for various things Oswego related, because I think it's just so helpful in getting students kind of on that next step, whatever that might be. So as I said, I graduated in 2015 with my degree in public relations. I was really interested as a student in marketing, communications, and really how the two go hand in hand to tell the story of a company and ultimately drive sales for that company. So that's why I went the PR route. I will say traditional public relations is a lot different than what my day-to-day is here in Digital Hyve. But the skills that I learned with my PR degree, the emphasis on writing, emphasis on public speaking and presentations has really, really been helpful in getting me to where I am today. And I really think that there are more skills that are going to help you, regardless if you go the PR direction or any other route in life. Having that strong background with an Oswego education is really helpful. So while I was a student at Oswego, in my first entry to public relations class, I actually had Laura come in and speak about her experience as a PR graduate and what she was doing for the Alumni Association at SUNY Oswego. And after she spoke, I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is such an awesome alum from SUNY Oswego. We had such similar backgrounds. And I really was like, I want to talk to this person a little bit more to get a better understanding of her path and what she did after her SUNY Oswego degree. And now Laura is the director of alumni. So definitely a great person to kind of form that relationship with early on as a freshman. So I met with Laura after one of my first classes and talked about what she'd done and what she was doing in the Office of Alumni at Oswego. And from there, it actually led me to my first job at Oswego, which was being the student office assistant for the alumni office, which I held my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And for any of you that are not familiar with the alumni office and all of the great resources that they have, not only for alum, but also current students, definitely something I want to encourage all of you to get involved in. You'll see throughout this whole presentation that really my path to get to where I am today has built upon itself. And in every layer that it builds upon, I think it's fair to say an Oswego alumni has helped push me to that next level. So definitely shout out Laura and the whole alumni program over at Oswego. So as I mentioned, I was the student office assistant there. And then after 1 year being the student office assistant, I moved into interning for the alumni office in the Alumni Sharing Knowledge program, which is a tremendous program that connects current students with alumni from Oswego, whether it be in a field that they're interested in or a specific location that they might be looking to move to, or a handful of other criteria that they'll match a student with an alum. And it was such a great experience interning for that program. I know now as a professional, I have a couple Ask Mentees. So it's always great to talk to students and have more of those one-on-one conversations about anything that might pertain to you when you're in school, looking to find that first job, and potentially even have those relationships beyond when you're a student and start having conversations even earlier on in your profession with that mentor. So I served as the Ask intern for a full year. That was my first, what we'll call on-campus internship, and really laid the foundation for future internships to come. After serving as the Ask intern, my second big internship while I was an undergrad was interning for Pickney Hugo Group, which is a full-service agency here in Syracuse. Full service, meaning they do traditional advertising, digital advertising, public relations, web design and development, really all services underneath the marketing umbrella. And I interned there during my senior year. A fun little story that I think is really helpful for any of you that are in a position where you're looking to get an internship, maybe even a more competitive internship where there's a lot of applicants. Doing whatever you can to stand out and really separate yourself from your peers is going to be so helpful. When I went to interview for Pick Me Hugo Group, I knew that, there's only a handful of agencies in Syracuse. A lot of students in Oswego are looking at those agencies to get that experience. So I knew it was a more competitive internship interview experience. So when I went, I had a physical binder portfolio of all of the work that I had done. I had examples of things that I did in my on-campus internship in the Ask program that I could speak to. And I was really able to speak to not only what I did as an Ask intern, but also some of the things I did as an alumni, office assistant, or even just being involved, whether it be in class projects or some additional extracurriculars that I did while I was a student. So having that ready to go for the internship was so helpful. And then when I finished my interview, I went back out to my car, and it might be a little bit cheesy or old school, but I wrote a handwritten thank you note to Joanna, who was the woman that interviewed me at the time. Wrote it right in my car, got right back out of my car, went to the front desk at Pick Me Hugo Group and said, hey, I know I was just in here 15 minutes ago for an interview, but I wanted to drop this thank you card off for Joanna. And before I had even made it back to Oswego, so an hour or so drive back north, I got in a call that I had secured the internship. So just a quick story that's really, I think, helpful and can have some big takeaways of the power that a simple thank you note can have. As well as coming prepared to any interviews with a strong portfolio of things that you have done professionally or personally that really lay into whatever internship you're looking to get. An additional internship I did when I was a student was for MedTech Association, which is a New York State trade association within the pharmaceutical and biomed industries. So again, very different from alumni, very different from digital marketing, what I do now, but a lot of transferable skills that I learned in my PR classes that were able to put me in a great position for that internship. I interned for MedTech for 6 months, and then my supervisor went out on maternity leave. So another quick plug, if you're ever in that position, it's great to just raise your hand and ask, hey, my supervisor is heading out on maternity leave. I completely understand that they're going to be gone for the next 3 months. Are there, is there any work or any support that you need in their absence that I could maybe help step in and do? And I just went ahead and asked that. And it ultimately led to me securing a paid full part-time position as I wrapped up my senior year. And then coming out of that, a full-time position that I was offered in April of my senior year. And if you want to talk about probably the most freeing and awesome feeling in the world, it's knowing that in April, before you graduate, you have a job lined up. And all you really need to do is, finish strong and, pass all of your finals and things like that and sit back and relax because all your hard work paid off and you have a job. Especially as I saw a lot of my friends frantically trying to figure out what they were going to do with, let's say, 6 weeks left in college. So always raise your hand and ask, is there more that I can do? How else can I help out? Hey, even though this internship is coming to an end, I'd love to stay on and work on some part-time projects if that's available. Having those asks go a really long way. And honestly, I think sometimes it's me asking those more challenging or out of the box questions that have helped me get to where I am today. So like I said, was brought on full-time at MedTech, worked full-time there for about 1.5 years and loved the experience there, but got to the point where I realized I wanted to do something a little bit different with my life. And I was really interested in digital marketing, everything that comes with working at an agency and the fun, fast-paced agency life. So I made that transition over to Digital Hyve and have been there for, I actually just celebrated my 4-year Hiversary earlier this month. So going on 5 years now. I'm going to talk a lot more about Digital Hyve in the next slides, but that's really just an overview of who I am and how I got to where I am. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we can certainly circle back to those. So as I said, we're going to do a quick little marketing lesson here. I promise this won't be too much like an intro to marketing course. But for any of you that have taken any marketing classes, even some classes over in the School of Communication, Media, and the Arts that focus on PR, communication, or sales, you'll probably learn early on about the 4 Ps of marketing, which essentially are going to be product, so what it is that you're selling, price, how much you're selling it for, place, where you're selling it, and then promotion, how you're selling it. Now, a marketing professor is going to go, you'll probably have 2 or 3 classes dedicated to the 4 Ps alone. We just went through them in 30 seconds. But I think you guys, everyone will get the gist of what goes into marketing around these 4 Ps. And when it comes to Digital Hyve, we really think of marketing specifically through the lens of promotion. Although product, price, and place definitely are top of mind with every campaign that we make, those are things that internal companies really are in charge of identifying what the products are, how much you're going to sell them for. And it's our job, once we have that information, to figure out how do we promote these products online, and how are we selling them. So we focus at Digital Hyve on that promotion spot. And when we look at promotions, there's so many different buckets of how promotion strategies are created. You have the overall promo strategy of looking at messaging and creative. You have a paid media strategy. So this might be any traditional advertising or paid digital advertising. I highlighted in red the things that here at Digital Hyve that we really excel at and are our bread and butter of packages that we offer clients. Digital advertising is going to be everything from Facebook, Google, Pinterest, Twitter, search engine optimization, search engine marketing. There are a lot of different products or tactics that fall under that umbrella. We also dabble a little bit in earned media at Digital Hyve. So this is for any of you that are more on the traditional PR side of things. Traditional PR tends to live within the earned media bucket, if you will. On our end, we also do a lot with reviews and review software because that's a form of earned media, what your customers have to say about you or your product. And how can we get customers to leave positive reviews? And then once we have those positive reviews, how can we continue sharing those with potential customers to help ultimately get that sale? And then lastly, we have the owned media space, which we also work a lot in. And this is any social media accounts, websites, blogs, really different areas of marketing that you, the user or company, own and control all of the messaging and anything that's put out on those platforms. So that was my high-level marketing versus digital marketing overview. I'm sure in the future they're going to have whole classes dedicated to digital marketing. I know when I was a student, digital marketing was maybe a couple of paragraphs in one of my marketing textbooks. It's a little bit newer when we look at marketing as a whole, but I think for me, that's part of what makes it so fun and exciting. There's a lot of challenges along the way, and it's so great to be fully immersed in such a new and upcoming industry and really being able to kind of pave the way as you go for everything that's going on here. So I just wanted to give that overview on digital marketing because I think it's helpful as we start talking about Digital Hyve, what my day-to-day is, and things like that. So Digital Hyve is a full service digital marketing agency. So essentially what that means is we will do anything and everything from our clients from a digital perspective. So what you can find online. We work with clients that range from entrepreneurs that maybe have a business idea and a logo that they sketched on a napkin, and now they need it to come to life.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
go
there's
ahead.
a question in the chat. So what are some of the biggest shifts that you've seen with the 4Ps within a pandemic?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go back to that because that's a good question. So when we look at some shifts that COVID is having specifically to marketing, I think one of the biggest things that we've seen is a shift in place. So that's where products are being sold. A lot of stores have closed some of their brick and mortar, either because they had to due to regulations or just from a financial standpoint. It's sometimes hard to maintain a brick and mortar store when you're in a pandemic. So we have seen a lot of our clients shift to driving more of their marketing campaigns around online sales. So the place that being e-commerce versus in-store. And with that switch, we also see a lot of the promotion switching as well, where call to actions are no longer as much focused on, hey, come in and visit our store. And maybe they're focused more on, getting them to come through on a digital website and make a purchase that way. Overall, from my experience, the product itself has not been too impacted unless you are a company like, let's say, Zoom, who has seen some major changes since the pandemic. And pricing tends to be, for the most part, at least in the industries that I work in, pretty consistent to where it's been before. Where you might see price fluctuations is if you're in let's say a company that's selling toilet paper or masks or something that's, there's a higher demand all of a sudden now due to the pandemic. So long story short, I think for me and what we see at Digital Hyve, the biggest trend is on changes in place and then how we adjust promotions for that. But great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions on the marketing side of things? Okay. So diving back into Digital Hyve, like I said, we are a full service agency. So we do everything from that entrepreneur that I mentioned with a logo on a napkin, all the way to larger brands that, target New York State or the nation as a whole for their marketing efforts. On the creative side of things, we'll do everything from website design, user UI or UX design, brand and identity, graphic design, print design, content design. We've done bus wraps, we'll do billboards. So even things that aren't necessarily digital by nature. If we have a client that runs a digital campaign and needs a little support with some creative services on traditional, anything traditional, we can support there. And then really where we live, as I mentioned, is in the digital marketing space. So I rattled off some of the tactics earlier, but this kind of gives a overall comprehensive look at some of the things that we do, which again range from the paid media side of it, earned media, and owned media as well. And I think the fun thing with, like I said, with digital marketing is it is always changing. So some of the tactics that are here on this slide, in a year might not necessarily be here. In a year might be replaced with something all completely different. We have to stay constantly up to date with what's happening. Not only, decisions that Facebook is making or Google is making, but also larger technology. As far as, there's a lot of updates with iOS 14 and how does that impact our campaigns? So there's a lot that we constantly have to be monitoring and changing. And I think that's one of the things I love so much about digital marketing and Digital Hyve is how nimble you have to be and how much can change. Because I think, I'm always up for that challenge and helping our clients kind of navigate this newer space. I always have this slide in here, just some honors that really hype up Digital Hyve because I think they are such a great company to work for. these awards really range from locally best places to work to more national recognitions. In 2018, we were listed as number 52 on the Inc. fastest 500 growing companies. I believe we were number 8 overall from the marketing or agency standpoint. And I say this not only to speak so highly about Digital Hyve, but also when you are in a position, whether it's finding an internship or finding a first job out of college, it's important to kind of look at these type of things when you're auditing and vetting different prospective employers. As somebody who may be new to coming on to Digital Hyve, if I see this, I immediately am like, wow, this has got to be a good place to work. They get a ton of awards on that. And then there's also awards around the overall growth that they have, which makes me feel really confident in joining this company because they're heading in a good direction. Now, that's not to say if a company doesn't have these awards that story is not the same for them, but just something to think about if you are in a position where you're looking at a couple of different agencies, again, whether from an internship or that first job out of college perspective. And then at Digital Hyve, I think one of the things that I love most about us is most of our clients are local to New York State, specifically Central New York and Finger Lakes area, as our offices are in Syracuse and Rochester. And we're really focused on helping businesses grow, which is so great when you get to work with businesses like Syracuse University. SUNY Oswego is one of our clients. So being able to give back to some of the higher eds that support the overall economies in upstate New York and helping with their admission goals or, things along those lines so that they continue to be successful colleges. We do very similar work and campaigns for other local, I would say even local giants when we think about Burn Dairy, Loretto, some of the casinos around here that have such a great name in Central New York. So being able to work on those campaigns is so helpful. And it's also great, the impact that you're having. One of the things that I always talk about when I look at Digital Hyve as from our clients is the variety of clients that we have and really what we call different verticals. So verticals are going to be industries at Digital Hyve that we know we have success in. So like I said, higher ed, we have a ton of clients in the higher ed space. Casinos, we do a lot of work for casinos. And really once we can prove that it's going to work for one college, it's, our efforts are going to work for other colleges. Internally, we are not, let's say, going for 2 colleges that are major competitors. Instead, we'll look at someone like SUNY Oswego and then maybe a college like New York Chiropractic College, which are not reaching into the same applicant pool, but ultimately are both going to be admissions based strategies. This is also really good to know if you are somebody who is looking to get an internship or first job out of college, and you're not 100% sure what industry you want to work for. Sometimes it helps to go to an agency that works with a handful of different industries because 1, you get to diversify your own portfolio. But 2, you get to really learn if there is an industry that resonates with you best. I know one of my colleagues at Digital Hyve started out as an account manager working on a handful of clients and then got to the point where she really found her niche in the automotive industry, which is another one of our verticals, and got to the point where now she is our senior automotive specialist and she helps her clients and any other automotive clients specifically with auto related campaigns. And now it's set Natalie up really for a successful career in any type of automotive marketing because she's found out that that's really the industry that she wants to get a lot more experience in and grow in long term. So very helpful, again, if you're not sure exactly what you're going to do, to go in a direction where you have an agency that has a handful of different industries so you can kind of better navigate that. So next, I want to talk about the account services team at Digital Hyve. So my 4+ years at Digital Hyve have always lived on the account services team. So definitely this is where a lot of my experience lives. For those of you that are not as aware of agency layouts or kind of how they work, I can actually go right here to a pod structure. So this pod structure is unique to Digital Hyve. However, larger agencies or even smaller agencies are going to mirror kind of a similar breakdown. So on the account manager side, that's ultimately the person that's going to be client facing and working with your clients and your overall team. And then at Digital Hyve, we have all of these silos, if you will, whether it be graphic design, digital marketing execution, SEO, web development, analytics, and we have specialists within each of those departments. And essentially, the account manager is what's bringing together all of those various specialists to, execute a campaign and ultimately reach client goals. So that overall is pod structure. Again, I'm going to speak to a little bit more what it looks like from the account services side of it, especially for somebody who's looking to get that first job in an agency and grow throughout their time there. So at Digital Hyve, our really entry-level position on the account services team is an account coordinator. Similar position titles that other agencies might be an assistant account executive, assistant account manager, some things to the really language in that nature. And our account coordinator, this is not often a client-facing role. They really just act as support for an account manager. Which is a great entry-level job because you get to sit back and really see someone who's slightly more seasoned leading campaign efforts. You can learn what works best. You can kind of navigate how, if you were an account manager, what your style would be by being paired up with someone a little bit more seasoned when you're early on. Account coordinators do a lot of day-to-day supporting tasks. So whether that be coming with a more senior account manager to a meeting to take minutes while that senior AM is navigating the conversation, the account coordinator can support with taking down any action items or things that need to be discussed coming out of that. Account coordinators also help with some internal project management. They'll help with proofing ads, proofing website copy. They sometimes will help out with some larger billing or administrative tasks that account managers have, but it really is a great supporting role. And I can say when I was at Digital Hyve in the account coordinator role, that's really when I learned the most. Because I was able to work with a ton of different account managers on a ton of different accounts. And again, see how everyone kind of did things differently. So that's really for any of you looking to go into the agency side of thing, I think a realistic expectation of that first job out of college. From a salary standpoint, I think one of the things that I always am really transparent with students, especially as you're graduating and entering the workforce, when you're looking at a job as an account coordinator or in an entry-level agency job, it's a little bit different than, let's say, when you were a student and you're Googling like average marketing salaries, because an average marketing salary is going to be looking at, somebody over the course of their life, and maybe you'll see that $55,000, $60,000, $75,000 salary attached to it. And I just want to be realistic because this was something I know when I graduated, it was a little bit of a shock. Starting out, you're going to be making most likely less than $40,000 in an agency. So definitely think about that as you're deciding where you're going to move, what you're going to do. For those of you that are graduating in May, even with COVID and a lot of the things going on right now, a lot of offices have switched to working virtually. I know at Digital Hyve, we're 100% remote and probably will be until summer or fall. So use that to your advantage. If you can, let's say you want to move to New York City, you're going to be graduating in May. Maybe start looking at agencies in New York City, and maybe they're also working remotely until summer or fall. And then that allows you to, let's say, move back home for a couple of months, work remotely, not have to pay rent, build up your savings, and then be able to make that move to a bigger city, if that works for you. I think the thing is, with COVID and a lot of jobs going virtually or going remotely, there's a lot of opportunity that students can now have that maybe they didn't have when we were going into the office 9 to 5. So definitely want to get creative when we're thinking about that, and also be realistic when we look at what, that first job is out of college. So an account coordinator at Digital Hyve will grow into a senior account coordinator. So this is just taking on a few more responsibilities, working on slightly larger accounts. At the senior account coordinator level, we sometimes will have these senior ACs have a little bit of client interface, and we often will have them work on some of our smaller dollar accounts or any pro bono work that we might do, because they're really good kind of learning accounts for senior account coordinators. After you kind of go past that account coordinator level, then you have overall account managers. So these are people that are a lot more day-to-day with the clients, overseeing strategy, overseeing larger projects, and really anything else that a client is paying Digital Hyve to do. The account manager is really owning that work, and the team working on everything. We have our manager of account services, who oversees all of our account coordinators and senior account managers and senior account managers. Backing up real quick, senior account managers really are just account managers that work on larger level accounts. You'll see that in agencies. It's just kind of a lot of titles. You're doing a lot of the same thing. It's just larger accounts, larger accounts. We have our director of account services that really is thinking about how we push Digital Hyve forward from an account services standpoint. She also looks at larger things around client revenue, what clients are more profitable, where we need to find more efficiencies on certain accounts. So definitely a higher level role that for most agencies, you'd be looking at somebody who has, 5, 10, 15 plus years of experience moving into that director role. And then, go ahead.
There's one more question. Sorry to interrupt. Digital Hyve seems to have a great employee culture and is evidenced by its awards. What is your favorite part about the Hive's culture?
Oh, that's so easy. The people that I work with. So I have to give total shout out and all the credit to our VP of HR, who is also an Oswego alum. She has done such a tremendous job in vetting various candidates. For any one position that we have at Digital Hyve, we have on the low end 50 people apply for, on the high end 150 people apply for. So she does a really, really good job in going through and making sure she's picking really the best candidate. And it's not, I think it's really twofold. One, all of my colleagues are incredibly hardworking and smart in the various silo that they own. So if I, as the account manager, have a question on SEO, I know my SEO specialist has pretty much all of the answers. And if there's something he doesn't know, he's going to figure it out. So it's so nice to have that team that you trust. And I think that helps professionally enjoy your colleagues and professionally aligns with the culture. But then personally, I think the bigger thing is, and you'll find this at agencies, we work really, really hard. Some nights we put in long hours, but we play really hard too as well. And we have a lot of fun together. Even virtually, we've transitioned really well to still maintaining that culture in a virtual space. Prior to COVID, I used to joke that I would spend 40 plus hours a week with my coworkers, and then Friday night happy hours, we might be out till 2:00 in the morning. And then on the weekends, I might go over to their house and hang out with them more. Even now, virtually, I play Among Us once a week with my coworkers at like 7:00. So it's really nice when your coworkers start to become really your closest friends. I think the best parallel I can make from a college perspective is if you're in a rigorous capstone course, or maybe you're on the board of a student-run organization and you're working so hard with a handful of other students, and then that relationship kind of expands beyond work and into a friendship as well. So that is hands down the best thing about Digital Hyve is the people. That was a little long-winded, but I love the people so much. I have to shout them out. Any other questions on just Digital Hyve culture or anything like that, Amaya?
There are no other questions currently, but I'll keep you updated if any come along.
Okay, perfect. So that really brings me to my current role as a senior account growth specialist. So as Amaya had mentioned in my bio, I still continue to oversee a portfolio of a couple of clients from Digital Hyve, just clients that I've been working with for the last 4 years and have a really strong relationship with and want to stay attached to, from really managing the day-to-day of those accounts. But I think the big shift is outside of the handful of clients that I kept, I moved away from a lot of the day-to-day with some of my clients and instead am supporting our account services team as a whole with identifying opportunities of growth for their accounts. So are there new services that we can be offering clients? Let's have a really good understanding of what it is that your client is looking to do with digital marketing. Let's evaluate how our plan so far is kind of stacking up against the goals and benchmarks that we put in place when we started a campaign, and what else is there, what else can we do, what else is there to do to really bump this up to the next level and make sure that we are completely servicing our clients and showing them new opportunities so that they can continue to stay fresh and innovative in this ever-changing digital landscape. So that is, I'm really excited for this role that I'm in. I have been in the role for about 6 months, but I won't lie, I think the first 4 months was really transitioning out of my day-to-day with a lot of my clients and into this. And I think in the last couple of months, just being able to work one-on-one with our account services team, as well as offering some trainings and solutions to any pain points that they have when they look at account growth or annual planning from accounts, has been really, really helpful. It's ultimately what my passion is not only growing businesses, but growing people. So helping grow Digital Hyve's account services and those people that then are going to go help and grow businesses. And you'll find that as you move up within an agency, you might have those opportunities that might pull you a little bit away from your day-to-day. And if you're somebody that does have aspirations beyond working on just the day-to-day of accounts, I would definitely encourage you to always, move on those opportunities. And even if you are in a position to, think outside of the box and see if there's an opportunity that you can create. I know my role as the account growth specialist, I probably worked for 12 months ahead of time with my director and Jeff Knaus, who's our CEO, on what that position looks like. So it was kind of fun and having a hand in crafting, what I currently am doing and what I'll continue doing. So I know I went over the pod support and explaining Digital Hyve's layout. Again, I put a couple of my clients that I work with on the left. As the account manager, you're really the one going back and forth with the clients, understanding their campaign, understanding their business and their goals, making sure our team understands all of those things, ensuring that the plan put in place is going to accomplish those goals, and then constantly going back with your client and talking through everything. And then I read this one time as far as what is an account manager's role in an agency, and it stuck really well with me. And I think it really helps dictate what we do. So I'm not the biggest football fan. I won't lie. I am sad the Bills lost this weekend. I know that was a big thing, and I was excited to see how far they did go. But when we look at account management through the lens of football, I think the best thing is that account managers tend to be both the quarterback and the cheerleaders. So we're the quarterback in the lens of we're the ones getting ready to set up that play. We're going to pass the ball and throw it over to our team, and then they're going to carry out whatever that play is. And then once we let go of that ball, we kind of shift over to that cheerleader side of it, where we are cheering on our team, advocating for our team, and really doing everything we can to push our team to that finish line. I talked a lot about really some of my day-to-day when I was just explaining what I did or how our agency is structured. But really, I think the bulk of account management, and this is not just true to Digital Hyve or even digital marketing, but if you're an account manager at any agency, whether that be traditional, PR, digital, whatever, I think your day-to-day is going to look very similar. I spend a lot of time in Gmail. I one time joked that I wish sometimes my salary was like paid per email, because I'd be like right up there with Jeff Bezos. Maybe not that many, but definitely a lot of emails. I spent a lot of time on client meetings and client calls, as well as internal meetings, team meetings. That's been a huge shift since COVID started. I used to, let's say, every day have probably 1 or 2 client meetings that I would have to drive to or host at Digital Hyve. And that has completely transitioned to all being done via Zoom. There is definitely some benefits there. I cut down on travel time altogether because doesn't take me any time to log into Zoom. But at the same time, you do sometimes lose some of the value that face-to-face outside of Zoom to Zoom, if you will bring. So it's been interesting kind of navigating through that with meetings. Some other big things that we do as account manager is a lot of problem solving, overall organization and project management. We also definitely have a hand in campaign budgets and strategies. And then, like I mentioned, going back to our clients and reporting and sharing all of the successes, as well as any negative things that occurred and what we're going to do moving forward to adjust for any negative things that we saw. So a lot happens in the day-to-day, but I think that's why it's so rewarding. I sometimes, I don't sit down and just say, hey, for 4 hours, I'm going to tackle this. I sit down and, I really tackle everything at once. So that was the bulk of my presentation. My screen stopped sharing, so let me go ahead and see if I can get this back up. Move my Zoom bar. Okay. And then the last thing I have, I know we have about 10 minutes left, so I didn't know if there were any questions, and we can certainly talk through questions at this point if there are them. If not, I can talk a little bit about finding a job and some tips and tricks I've learned along the way, but I didn't know first off if there were any additional questions.
There aren't currently any questions, so your tips and tricks would be wonderful to be talked about right now. Oh, but there's one more question. One just came in. So what is one most important piece of advice you would share with students right now who are interested in communication fields?
Yeah, so I think my biggest piece of advice is honestly the number one thing I lead with on this slide, and it's networking. Networking is so important, especially if you're someone that's looking to work in communications, business, really any of those type of industries, because when you graduate college, if you have, definitely do all of the things in regards to having good grades, being involved on campus, having internships, and doing all of those things, because that's, let's say, the foundation of what you need to get that first job. However, the same way that you're out there being in charge of clubs, getting great grades, building a strong portfolio, there are also hundreds, if not thousands, of other people out there doing the same thing. So that's where networking really helps to kind of set you apart. When I got my job at Digital Hyve, I'd actually met Jeff through a handful of events that he did both for Oswego, as well as some other kind of networking groups that are here in Syracuse that I was a part of after graduating college. So I'd seen Jeff in a handful of these events. I'd introduced myself to him at one of the events, talked about the fact that we both were Oswego alum and had that kind of connection. It's always definitely, there's been a few times where I've just solely had conversations with some awesome people on the fact that they were Oswego alumni. So always, always, always lead with that, especially if you know you're talking to another Oswego alum. But that networking piece is huge because, like I said, I had met Jeff and I had talked to him. And then when I went to apply for a job at Digital Hyve, it wasn't that like, oh, hey, Jeff, remember me, that one event that we talked about or that I talked to you about? Yeah, hire me. It's not that. It's not like, hey, just because I have a relationship with Jeff, I'm guaranteed a job. What it is, hey, I'm coming to you with a great resume, a strong portfolio, a cover letter that shows how interested I am. I've prepped for my interview. I've done all of those things to make me a great candidate. And also, I know Jeff. And it's just like that one extra cherry on the top that I think does help if you're a strong candidate already. And I can say that's ultimately how I got my job at Digital Hyve. And the networking piece goes so much farther than that. I mentioned early on, I reached out to Laura after she spoke in a PR class, my intro to PR class. And through that, not only did I get a job in the alumni office and then an internship, I can even say, my involvement as an alum in Oswego, presenting to you guys today is a direct result of that one time that I raised my hand in my intro to PR class. So I can't continue to emphasize more how important networking is, but network every opportunity that you get. Even if it doesn't seem like it's going to be a great fit to go to a certain event, there's also no harm in going and just practicing your elevator pitch to people that might not be your dream job, but it's somebody that you can practice and have that back and forth and get more comfortable for when you are maybe at a networking event with your, dream employer on the other line. Any other questions there, Maya?
Not that I see of right now in the chat.
Okay. So those are big things when it comes to finding that job. I think another thing that's really important that sometimes when I was a student, a lot of people talked about finding that first job, but then once you have that job, what happens? So I want to end with just a few pointers, if you will, about once you have that first job, how you stand out and then how you grow within an organization. I would say the biggest thing is to ask questions. When I started Digital Hyve, we had, I want to say I was the 12th or 13th employee. We now have over 55 employees. So I have seen so many people get hired and come in and start at Digital Hyve. And it's so interesting within the first couple of weeks, even though all of these employees are just in training, you have a really good sense of who's going to be that real strong colleague of yours because of the questions that they asked during training. So definitely ask all of the questions, learn as much as you can within those first couple of weeks in training when you're onboarding into that new role, and not just training for your specific job, but understanding how the company works holistically, and then getting a good sense of the overall company culture. Digital Hyve, for example, like I said, we have a great company culture. You often will find us hanging out with one another outside of work, but even at work, you know what I mean? It's definitely an environment where we want to clock out and we want to eat lunch together and we want to have brainstorm sessions. And we want all voices to be heard. So knowing that that's our company culture as someone who's new and starting, fitting into that culture and speaking up and taking time out to get to know your colleagues is really, really helpful when you're looking at growing in an organization. In addition to just asking questions, feel free to schedule one-on-one meetings with various people at your organization to learn more about what it is that they do, how they could potentially utilize you for support in their role, whatever else it might be. And then speak up. I can say in my new role as our senior account growth specialist, I got to the point where I was like, hey, I've been a senior account manager for about a year now. What's next for me? And let's start having that conversation. And sometimes that can be a little vulnerable of a place for people to be in. And I think a lot of us haven't necessarily had those opportunities to even have those conversations before, but definitely, you know, put yourself out there and speak out, or speak up, especially if you're in an environment where, you know, like Digital Hyve, they often tell us all the time, speak up. So if you're getting that message from your leadership team, be the one to ultimately do that, to raise your hand, to speak up, and to find new opportunities, because a simple suggestion that you might have could ultimately turn into 12 months down the road, a new promotion that is yours. And they didn't even consider anybody else for it because they immediately thought of you and how involved you'd been.
There's one more question.
Yeah.
I know you said you were involved with some organization as a student. What skills did you gain that were or are super helpful for you as a professional now?
Yeah, so I think the biggest skill that I gained, specific to being involved as a student outside of your normal coursework, is some of the involvement I had in being on an e-board for a given club. It was definitely helpful with that overall networking experience that I keep coming back to. But I think the other thing is it shows really strong leadership, that maybe you don't have, or you don't have the opportunity to be a leader the same way when you're looking at classwork. So being able to lead a board, and even speak to some of the challenges that come in with that are going to be key. And I think it's also really helpful for me in learning skills on delegation. That was something as a student, especially if you're doing your own independent work, you know, you're project managing yourself, but you're in charge of everything. When you move over to being involved more so on campus at an e-board, you now have a whole board of people as well as a whole organization that are looking to get involved. That's why they're there. So being able to delegate tasks, is something that I didn't get a ton of opportunity to do just academically, but kind of when I switched to some of those extracurricular activities, that's where you have that ability to practice that skill set. And I can say professionally, being able to delegate is probably, one of the things that entry-level employees struggle with the most because they haven't had the opportunity to do it. So if you can find that on campus, that'll be key.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you for participating, and to Anja for inspiring us. We hope to see you all at the other Imagine 2021 day sessions offered today with Kevin McMahon at 3 p.m. and Nina House at 7 p.m. See the links in the chat. Have a great day. Thank you so much, Anja, for coming.
Yep. Thank you, Amaya, and thank you everyone else at Oswego. Great chatting with you.